welcome. Tonight on a very special Unearthly Podcast, we talk about depression. Kind of like every night, I think. This is episode 392, streaming live on the 3rd of March, 2021, and featuring Vincent and the Doctor, written by Richard Curtis, and starring Matt Smith as the Doctor, Karen Gillian as Amy Pond, and featuring Tony Curran as Vincent Van Gogh. I'm Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and I've been getting through this week by double fisting coffee and Moscato. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Hi, I'm Randy. I've been clinically depressed since 1981.
And
Hi,
Matt Winchell.
Randy. Oh, you said me.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello.
I
I'm
wasn't
going
expecting
to
you to.
relate to you all a soliloquy about my loneliness while I also drink my green tea.
And Thomas Fireheart.
I believe this is the first time I've watched this and not cried.
Before we go into banter, I want to know from the Australian side of things, how do you pronounce the name of Tony Curran's character?
Well, if I could remember the way it's actually pronounced, that comes
What is
up
the
in
way
an
it's
episode of
pronounced
QI.
in a regular conversation in Australia?
Likely Van Gogh, but because of I can't even remember what necessarily influenced it, but I don't think it was necessarily this episode, but I tried to say Van Gogh. Van Gogh. Because it's weird, because actually technically the van bit would not be pronounced that way either from what I can recall. It like comes up on an episode of QI where it actually be like, it's basically sounds like you're clearing your throat.
Well, yeah, I mentioned before the stream, it comes from Germanic roots. So the van was probably originally a von and got changed, somewhere along the lines of linguistic decay.
But yeah, so, the curator here says it like you said it with the phlegmatic sound, which is closer to the Germanic roots. In the United States, it usually rhymes with snow, and in England, it seems, based on other media I've seen, to rhyme with cough. So I was very curious how the Australian way to say it was.
Yeah. At least I'll put it this way: up until seeing certain things where it's like, no, it's actually like pronouncing it closer to correct would be Goff or Goch. So yeah, it's like it seems to like just, I don't know, depend. And a lot of people would probably just still go with Van Gogh because they've never been told otherwise.
Yeah.
But now I'm at that point in my life where I'm very anal retentive about trying to pronounce things correctly in certain things. Unless I'm talking to people where it's like they'll probably just fucking be on my ass about it, so I just don't care as much. But otherwise, I'll try to get stuff correct.
I'd be
You
more
can't
anal
educate
if it was
the unwilling.
I'd be more anal if it was a living person who can, take offense to it. But instead, I'm probably going to stick with the one that people will know who I'm talking about. So, how's everybody's week?
Not too bad. Didn't really get much done over at the flat rather than just sanding off stuff. And I started watching Critical Role again because now I'm on campaign 2, and I'm at I think I'm up to episode 5, at least as far as I've watched 1 through 4.
The single digits were such a long time ago.
Yeah, I couldn't make it much past 5.
I still watch every Thursday night. Blah.
It's one of those things where it took me, it took me 2 years, I think, to get through the first campaign. And I had more free time then because I only worked once or twice a week. Now it's I work 4 times a week. So I'm like, okay, if I want to even try the way that I would marathon, heavy air quotes, this would be on a day off. I'll try to get through at least one. If I get through it and still have enough time, I'll maybe start a second one, but not necessarily go out of my way to try finishing it. Otherwise, I'll try to limit it to like maybe one episode a day, or I'll get to the intermission, stop, and then the next day I'll go from the intermission and to the end.
That's the problem, is it's remarkably too long, it seems like.
Which I think is probably why official D&D stuff usually only gives them a 2-hour time slot, even though I've heard other people say, well, no, that's too short.
It is too short to play a D&D game. You're lucky if you get anything done in 2 hours.
But,
as a GM, I would know.
Yeah, you
2
know how
hours
long
is usually long enough to get the pizza orders, break out the Doritos, watch some videos, and then sit down and be like, okay, it's time to start the session. At least for an in-person game. I haven't played one of those since fucking the aughts. But
out of our
I think to be fair, the one that I've watched that if it was an official D&D one, I feel like, I mean, to be fair, it was Chris Perkins, but I feel like he managed to make it work because he just tried to get as much done in that, or they'd allow them to go extra long because he knew they'd have to get what they had to get done.
And then just trimmed it.
No, they do them live on Twitch, so it was the idea is they had a time slot.
I will be right back. My Discord's still packing up.
Okay.
I was wondering why his voice was kind of going in and out, like you couldn't tell if we were talking or not.
Yeah, I was getting confused for a moment too. Okay.
Yeah. I will say it's been funny. I guess I've also been watching a series of videos that goes back to like 2016 at the least, by someone called, God, I forget how his last name is. It's either Matt Colville or Matt Colville or something. I've just been like getting back into watching D&D related content, even though I don't play it yet technically. And it's just like, well, hey, why not? And started watching that guy's stuff, and it's been interesting.
Well, you know, the best D&D content out there is the Crap Guide too,
which is now ended.
Yeah, it has now ended, but it was a great run. Anyway, my week, I just talked to my doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like I'm in for at least another 2 months hold up in here.
Nah.
Before they can, before they'll probably be able to get me my shot. Which is, you know, bad because I'm starting to see the walls close in.
So not a state where disability or weight or anything like that is going to help you out.
No, it is, but that's
it just got you. It's just that
bad. But it needs to get through everything else first before I can get to
him. It's there's phases, and the phase they're going into now as school teachers. Just because of mass exposure, the next one is going to be people with health risks, which is where I qualify. And they said they want to prioritize me in there, but it's still probably going to be about 2 months.
So sometime in May.
Which it's interesting, the conflicting things you hear, because the in DC they're kind of claiming that within the next 2 to 3 months, everybody in the country should be able to get vaccinated.
Meanwhile, that's the politicians talking.
Meanwhile, the actual states are just like, yeah, the average person will get it maybe late summer if we're lucky.
Yeah. Typical.
Yeah.
I know somebody getting married in July, and they were like, yeah, I'm probably going to have to, I'm going to wait and see what happens in Ohio before I RSVP to that.
And, I've been in here since, last January under the advisement, like, you catch this, you are going to die. So that was a good enough thing for me to hole up in my little hobbit hole here. And the thing is, I realized it's been at least 3 seasons since I left this room, or since I left this apartment. And they were asking, when did the last time you did this? It's like, I don't know. All the weeks just blend together. It's like
Get me out.
the only difference between June 25th and December 25th is you look outside once and there's snow there. And snow is this remote concept because you never feel it, you just see it.
How precious.
And my doctor's like, yeah, I can see that. And my doctor was, by the way, video phoning in from her own house where she's holed up. So, yeah. Joy. Other than that, no, it's just been another week.
I start playing Ziggurat. I've died at least 6 times. It's important to die in that game because it is a roguelike game. It's where you can death allows you to unlock stuff, and including more characters. So gotta keep running through the floors. They're randomly generated which monsters will appear there, and keep going at it. So far, I've managed to get to the 4th floor in 4 hours. So I think there's only a total of maybe somewhere between 6 and 10 floors. I can't remember for sure. I got to the last floor once, died to the end boss, and got a achievement for it. So I know I can get there. It's just a matter of time. Other than that, I guess not much going on. I did forget to stream early this week, so I had to do an extra stream today. Not that it affected much because actually the other podcast I'm a part of, the person running has decided that they want to do it bi-weekly because they apparently got home, passed out, and then woke up like about a half hour before we were going to start the show.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, yeah, you probably need rest then. See you later. See you next week. Trying to think anything else going on. Not particularly. Oh, I heard that Daft Punk is breaking up, so I ordered their last album. It was still available for under $10, so I grabbed it.
Breaking up, broke up.
Oh, yeah, I guess technically the term is they are broken up now.
Yep, one of them just didn't want to do it anymore.
I suppose. Yeah, what you gonna do there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was really sad when I heard about that.
I've been seeing a few extra videos making the rounds.
I've been listening to Discovery just because that was always my favorite album from them.
Discovery's one of the best ones, but Random Access Memory is still really great in my book too.
There's only a couple of songs I like from that one.
I liked all of them. There's only like the end song I think was kind of meh to me. The rest of it I absolutely enjoyed.
What's weird is that I got in the mood to listen to Discovery the day before I heard the news they broke up.
Oh, yeah, that's just gotta be a weird feeling. And also, matter of fact, actually, I think last week I heard something about them too before then hearing that they broke up. I'm like, serendipitous universal events. Like, how the hell do people keep bringing up awesome things like this, and then suddenly, like the next week, something terrible happens?
Anyway, on that note.
Yeah, I ordered that album and a couple other things, but yes, we should probably get moving.
On tonight's show, we've got birthdays. I would say we have news, but we don't. We have exactly one piece of geek talk. It's going to be a fast episode tonight, folks.
Are we doing a historical fact check today, or do we not have anything to talk about?
Not really. I think we've actually covered what little historical things there are in this.
I have a weird rant that's not really historical, but I'm going to save that for the
review.
For the likes and dislikes.
Fair enough.
Because it's more about the portrayal than it is about actual fact. Anyway, birthdays. So, first birthday we have is a couple on the 26th of February. The first is Ingrid Oliver, or is that Ingrid Olivier? I can't tell which, who played Osgood from 2013 to 2017. She turned 44. Next is Tony Selby on the same day. He played Sabalon Glitz back in the 80s. He turned 83. On the 28th of February is the birthday of Murray Gold, the composer from 2005 to 2017. He turned 52.
Can we have him back?
On March 1st is the birthday of Roger Delgado, who played the first Master from 71 to 73. He would have been 103, but died back in 1973 at the age of 55. On March 2nd is the birthday of Alexander Armstrong, who did the voice of Mr. Smith from the Sarah Jane Adventures. He turned 51. And then Stephen Thorne, who played Omega in the Three Doctors, among other roles, would have been 86, but died in 2019 at the age of 84. So that is our birthdays for this week. Happy birthday, Ingrid, Tony, Murray, Roger, Alexander, and Stephen. And that moves us on to news, except there is no news. Not even Big Finish news. And the Big Finish free this week is a non-Doctor Who, so...
Just a whole lot of nothing this week. So immediately go to Geek Talk, which Bill has a bit that he wants to talk about.
Yes. So I watched the first few episodes of the new season of Batwoman, and I thought it worth talking about now because if you recall, there was the big issue at the end of last season where the actor who played Batwoman, whose name escapes me at the moment,
Ruby Rose.
Ruby Rose, there we go. Abruptly announced that she quit, or I don't think they ever gave the behind-the-scenes reason for that, but she would.
They've been hush-hush about that. There's multiple takes on what might have been going on, but yeah.
So, of course, the big question was, how on earth is a character who is kind of herself a legacy character, who got her powers and such from her family member, Bruce Wayne, going to all of a sudden be replaced by a new actor in season 2? Or were they just going to pretend she had been black all along? So they did not pretend she had been black all along. The first episode actually starts off with a plane crash, and for a second I thought that they were actually so pissed off at her that they were going to kill her in a ball of fire in episode 1.
That's called getting McLeaned.
But what actually happened was that there was a crash. Her suit was found by somebody in the debris, but the body was never found. So it was a combination. The first episode was basically a tribute to Kate Kane, with the later episodes kind of being a, hey, she might not actually be dead. And here's basically this trail of breadcrumbs that we're going to follow for the rest of the season. So my speculation at this point is that they probably were able to talk her into showing up maybe in the season finale. Maybe she'll show up and be like, yeah, you found me, but you've been doing a good job as Batwoman this season, so I'm going to retire and let you take up the cowl, something like that. But it's hard to tell. The new character who takes up Batwoman basically, they make it clear through a combination of choppy exposition and actual storytelling, which I guess it makes sense because the season was probably written when Rose quit. But they make it clear she has the skills of Batwoman, but she comes from a very different background. She was basically a child of the foster system / spent time homeless, that sort of background. So she comes at things from a very different angle, and has a very different relationship with the Crows, who are not her family members. So those dynamics definitely inform it being a different type of season.
So she's basically a female Jason Todd.
Basically, it
Um,
sounds like, yeah.
I mean, there's only one person. Well, I'm trying to. I haven't seen much of Todd before he was killed the first time. Um, I would say
Um,
kind of yes.
yeah, Todd was basically an orphan. He was
Oh,
just
okay.
basically running the streets. As a matter of fact, I believe he was caught by Batman stealing something from the Batmobile,
I think that might be the case. I can't remember if
as I
that was him
recall. And because the kid was gutsy enough, Bruce decided to take him in
But
and
yeah,
train him better.
a major aspect of this Batwoman is that she was basically caught possessing somebody else's drugs and did 18 months in jail for it, which colors a lot of her relationships with other characters and with the law and things like that. Um, so there's definitely going to be bits of that coming up throughout the rest of the season. So I've liked it so far. Like I said, some of the early episodes where they were establishing her as a new character, it was very clear they were like, we need to explain this to the audience, but we're not sure how without changing the script too much. But once they got past that, I think it's been on pretty solid footing. I think a lot of the conflict that was going to happen in terms of the big bads of the season, and I say plural because I think there's another one that hasn't been introduced yet. But I think that part is pretty much staying the same, and they're just changing some of how they're going about it and the motivations to keep the season mostly the way it was going to go.
Keeping the plans but changing the reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's hope she eventually doesn't go out the same way Jason Todd did.
You're right.
Beaten within an inch of their life with a crowbar and then having a building blow up around them.
Yeah, I feel like the only theory I'd have from making it seem like the original character isn't dead is a matter of if they're leaving it open in case they can lure the original actors back rather than necessarily making a deal.
That's what I thought at first, but considering that the big mystery of the season is that everybody is trying to find her and basically they're going up against the person who allegedly has her captive. They can only keep that a question so long without the heroes all coming off as completely ineffectual. So they either need to find a dead body or a living body at some point.
Not to mention, now I've had a feeling like it's been entirely a waste of time.
Is Bruce Wayne still missing?
Yes, they did establish what he looks like because they did a what's his name?
They have a guy that swaps faces or something like that.
They did. Was it Tommy Oliver? Hush. But yeah, they had that plot. Although I think it was not. I think it was going to run longer, but it didn't. It only ran for a couple of episodes where they give him Bruce Wayne's face. So if Bruce Wayne ever appears in the show, we know who he's going to be played by. But that's all we really know. Other than the fact that I think they did establish in season 1 that that Batman and the Joker have both been missing for the same amount of time. And there are hints that we may find out more about the Joker this season.
Well, I was just speculating. I'm wondering if with the search for the original Batwoman, if they might accidentally find Bruce Wayne instead.
Oh,
that's a possibility too. Actually, that's actually a good plot twist.
We don't know if he's dead or alive. We just know that he left Gotham seemingly of his own volition and never came back,
or has yet to come back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's it then.
Yep.
And that's it for Geek Talk.
Yep.
And I didn't check who's doing the summary because someone said they were writing one down. So
Thomas was writing it up, so it's Thomas's turn tonight.
Yep.
Stopwatch is ready. So Thomas, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, the Doctor and Amy are at the Musée d'Orsay and see an odd alien creature in a painting by Vincent van Gogh. Going back in time to visit him and figure out what the hell it is. After becoming acquainted with Vincent, they find out the creature, called a Caphreus, is only visible to Vincent directly, and the Doctor and Amy can only see it indirectly, like through a mirror the Doctor uses, as well as the fact it's been killing people, including a little girl. After some stop-start due to Vincent's manic depression getting the better of him, they decide to confront the Kefrayets. Doing so at night at a local church that Vincent paints. During the encounter, they realize that the Kefrayets is blind, and Vincent manages to fatally stab it with his easel, even though he had no intention of killing it. The next day, the Doctor and Amy decide to cheer him up by taking him to the modern day and showing him how well regarded his art has become after his death, with Amy assuming when they drop him back, that will result in a flood of new paintings. However, when they return to the modern day, they find no new paintings, and Amy assumes their effort was for nothing, as he still killed himself, only for the Doctor to reassure her that what they did still mattered because they added to his pile of good things. The episode ends with Amy noticing one small change, in that the sunflower painting is now dedicated to her. The end.
Wow. Fastest one. 1 minute, 33 seconds.
There's so much of this that is really just character stuff that the actual plot is very brief.
That's not something I have a problem with, to be fair, so.
All right.
You rolled for who's up next, Randy?
Yep, and it's you, actually, Matt.
Uh-huh.
So, what did you like about the episode overall?
What I like about the episode overall? You know what? This is one of the few episodes, and we've mentioned this before time and again, this is one of the few episodes where time travel actually enters the plot. I mean, it doesn't affect things as much as it usually does, but the fact that we actually are actively using time travel between two different places a couple of times throughout the episode is actually a nice touch. Because we very seldom ever see it. Usually we just land in a place and things just progress.
And this is before Stephen Moffat abuses it wrongly in an episode called A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Yeah, before it gets abused.
All right. Bill, how about you?
So I think I'm going to go with, I like the fact, this is probably the one thing I like about the way they portrayed this, is that I like the way they explained that giving somebody a good weekend does not solve depression, and that it that on itself was not enough to massively affect the character's ultimate fate. Because it is a lifelong thing that requires more than just enjoying yourself to solve. And yeah, I think they did a good job with that aspect of it.
All right. Thomas.
You know, I guess I can't really say with much authority because I don't know jack shit about Van Gogh, but I like the fact that they didn't try, while like the Doctor and Amy are gushing over him, the fact they portray what I guess was very likely true, and that he was not appreciated in his time and everyone's basically treating him like shit. And it's just like, wow, that's kind of a nice change. I feel like most of the historical figures the Doctor usually runs into are still like, you know, people who were actually liked in the time, or if they weren't, it's because it was like, you know, Rosa Parks because of the shit going on at the time there and stuff like that. But otherwise, you know, usually we're following historical figures who are celebrated in their time as well as after. So it was nice seeing
in this he's just another poor starving artist.
Yeah.
Which there's a dime a dozen of those.
But how many become as popular as him afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, you don't know that at the time of their present when they're alive. Most of the famous artists didn't become famous until after their death. And that holds for more than just Van Gogh. It holds true for a great many artists. Some artists had backup, another career that supported them, but there were a great many people that were, begging for food because, yeah, they couldn't afford their paintings weren't selling enough for them to even uh, support getting 3 meals a day.
Mm.
So I like the emotion in this. There are several points where, like Thomas said, you just want to cry because you know where it's going, or it's just, the emotional highs. The music helps very well with that, but
Mm-hmm.
it does give you an emotional feeling.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about what you didn't like. And Matt, you're first.
Actually, speaking on what is or isn't supposed to be part of this, they at one point they almost kind of play off Van Gogh's issues like it's bipolar disorder, which isn't quite right. I get what they were possibly trying to get for, but that was not the they didn't quite get that right because it's like literally it's a flick of a switch in his head and suddenly Van Gogh's okay to go run off and paint a church.
Yeah, this is what I was going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who has been depressed to the point of actually contemplating suicide, the way they do depression in this is just wrong. Yes, he was probably manic depressive, but that does not mean you're going back and forth all the time like that.
Mm.
You're not mood swinging to that extent. You have your hours where you're hyper, but when you're depressed, you're not sobbing in bed. You just don't want to do dick. You don't cry because it's not worth the effort to.
Mm-hmm.
When you're depressed, you just want to lie around. It's not how they treated the depression in this just bothered the hell out of me, considering it was essentially a PSA for depression.
Right.
Thank
Which is
goodness they had got
one
rid of
thing
that
about
PSA bit at the end, by the way.
one thing about that is actually kind of funny because with the depression aspect, I thought that a scene was in this episode that they actually saved until the Pandorica episode. Because I really thought that they were going to be doing the whole foreshadowing of why Amy was crying, even though there didn't seem to be anything wrong, which of course would have been Rory being absent. But that scene is not in this episode, which is weird considering with the whole theme, it would have seemed like that's what they were kind of building to.
No, that scene where with the him painting the blowing up TARDIS, that was actually for the actual episode that starts to happen.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an unrelated scene. I'm pretty sure to what I was saying.
But yeah, the depression bothered me, and that was what was going to be my thing, was the fact that how they did the depression just annoyed the fuck out of me.
They did it right sometimes, but then then like I said, they do almost basically a bipolar, and it's like that's not how that works.
Mm.
All right, Bill, what was yours?
So I'm going to go with the fact that I was annoyed by the fact that they seemed to be making such a goal of changing history. This person is, hugely famous in part related to his death and things happening before and after his death. And yet they kind of go out of their way to show him these things that they hope will cause him to live a longer life, and then they're upset that history hasn't changed. And those sequences kind of annoyed the shit out of me because that's really not what
Mm.
the doctor's supposed to be doing.
To me, it was Amy assuming that would be the case, and the doctor knowing full well that it wouldn't, but wanted to show Vincent something positive for a change anyway. Like, he knew this is not going to change his fate, but I want to do it anyway. Like,
I
sort
could
of a thing.
accept that if the doctor is confident, I could kind of accept that.
They do seem to establish that he's not expecting a change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They
and like
established a
even
couple
when they
times
get
he's not
back,
expecting it.
Amy's like when they get back, Amy's the one who's like, "Oh, nothing changed." The doctor's just kind of like, "Yep, I wasn't." Like the look on his face is very much, "Yeah, I wasn't really expecting a change."
Like I guess it this kind of seems weird to me that they even brought him to the modern day in the first place if there wasn't at least a hope of that happening.
Mm.
Maybe it just thought it would brighten his day,
Yeah,
not his life.
Yeah,
just let him know on some level he'll always be appreciated. But that's not going to stop the depression.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas, how about you? What did you dislike?
Honestly, the overuse of music. Because there are some scenes that I just feel would have played a lot better if there was no music in there at all. Like
an example? Yeah.
The scene where the doctor's trying to get Vincent out of bed and he snaps at the doctor. To me, I feel like if we didn't have this friggin' depressing violin music under it, that actually probably would have worked better.
I don't know.
Later on.
Yeah. But generally, I feel. I mean, that's kind of an issue to a point. The more old Who I watch, the more I feel like New Who relies too much on music, whereas there's there are scenes in old Who that work because there's no music.
Yeah,
music could have helped,
but again, that's another era difference.
Yeah,
it's back then you used occasional orchestration, and ever since the mid 90s, it's been constant orchestration. I think that might have been Star Trek's effect on TV. And like I said, mine was on how they did the depression. So, favorite scene? Matt.
I'm trying to think. Favorite scene. There's a couple of good ones. I think I'll actually go. I'll go with the first time the monster shows up and Bango's protecting everybody and the doctor trying to do his best, but is always sugar high and loopy as he always is.
All right. I don't have much to add on that. The one where he's swatting at it with a stick.
Yeah, where he tries swatting at his stick and he's just attacking the air. Doctor, it's gone. Oh, right, of course. Tosses the stick.
Of course, you realize that if this had been the 12th Doctor, he would have just adjusted his sonic shades and he'd have been able to see it.
Possibly. Or at least had some sort of detection thing on it so he could go, wait, there's something there that shouldn't be there, and start trying to poke it back too.
Mm.
But yeah, that's basically about it. That was an amusing scene.
All right, Bill.
So we're talking favorite scenes. I think I'm going to go with the scene where the doctor comes out with his device and he's kind of he's so wrapped up in his scientific process that he's ignoring the fact that, you know, the giant alien that seems to want to eat him is inches away, snarling at him, until all of a sudden he's like, "Oh shit, I should react to this." I related to that scene.
All right, Thomas.
I guess given it hasn't been taken yet, I don't gonna have to go with the backup because either way it was gonna be a museum scene, but it was a matter of which would be left. But I will go with the one where they do come back after having taken him to it, and the doctor like basically just says like, yeah, we didn't really change history on the whole, but we still added to like the whole we added to his pile of good things bit. So it's like what we did mattered. It's just it didn't, even if it didn't like, you know, change the course of history.
All right. I thought we discussed that scene a bit earlier, so my favorite scene, I think, is the one where they're in the church, I think the crypt or whatever, and he realizes that it's blind and proceeds to yell it out like an idiot.
Which is typical of
Because
this
it's
doctor.
blind as a bat, and now it's coming right at us.
You fool!
Yeah, it was the "you idiot" moment.
If
But
Gandalf
it still makes
was
sense
their
'cause it's the
doctor, he'd be yelling
you
at
know,
you for being a
heady on
fool.
his discovery that's doing it. But yeah, it was still a oops.
Mm-hmm.
All
You
right.
fool of a took. How about you just shout in a corner by yourself next time?
Least favorite scene, Matt.
Least favorite scene. Trying to think. I'll say the one that did take me out the most is the doctor is talking to Amy after Van Gogh was upset, and they're just kind of like, well, maybe we should just go on our own. And then all of a sudden he's just there with the coat and the hat on. It's like, really?
Yeah, I'm fine. Let's go. I'm like, Jesus.
Because, well, Randy, you may have had depression worse. I have also had my bouts of it, and yeah, that's just not how that works.
No.
That's completely just smacked up. Nope.
Wait, so I was looking up facts for the scene I was going to talk about. What scene did you just say?
The one where he comes out after
just comes out after
having
being
crying
upset
in his
and
bed.
just fully dressed. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
You
Like,
were talking about the quick snaps, that sort of thing.
mhm.
Yeah, the upswings like that just don't happen. You have a point where you're in bed like that, you don't want to get up. That's going to be your day, or at least until you have a long nap.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I'll say I've woken up after a nap from that kind of feeling normal, but usually not. It's usually not a few seconds.
So
Yeah,
generally, you think it would have worked better if they'd had it like cut to the next day, and that maybe
something like that.
It would have been
fallen
better if they
asleep
would have cut to
outside
the doctor
waiting
and Amy
for-
trying to do the painting, and then something causes it to fail. Then they quickly come back, and then the next day he's easily convinced to fine go and do the painting.
Or several hours later, or something.
Or
Yeah.
or at least a few hours later, or something. And maybe actually, as it's failing, their attempt is failing, he suddenly shows up. That would be a little closer, at least.
Right. So is it me then?
Yeah.
Goes from me, yeah, to you.
All right. So I am going to go the scene where he is yelling at the doctor from the bed. And I would definitely say a large part of that is the directing of the scene. And that's part of it is how it's acted, but I'm wondering if that's the actor, the director. I am seeing that Tony Curran was educated at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama back before TV was a real common thing, but not so early that I think that that's the most likely reason, because the score we mentioned was also part of the problem. I would also say the cinematography and such, by which I mean if the scene was written the same way, but it was acted and scored and filmed in a subdued way where he's just like, get out of my room, leave me, like just somber, and not like he's acting for the stage and being huge and melodramatic
Yeah.
and completely unlike he's been to that moment essentially. If it had been a much more subdued moment, I would have believed it a lot more and it could have been a very strong scene. But because it was all of those things seemed like they were playing for the stage and not the screen, it instead really took me out of the episode and really drove down my opinion of the episode from the first time I watched it.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was
I'll
not a
just
scene. I mean,
collection of scenes right in this section. Yeah.
at best, if you're going to go for a melodrama, he should have yelled at the doctor to get the fuck out,
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to accurately portray depression, and somebody's trying to pick you up and you don't want to do it because
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel like it, you tend to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But
It
yeah,
tends to lead to fuck off the world can rot kind of moment.
I remember just with how extreme it was. The first time I watched the episode, I was like, I felt it was more portrayal of paranoid schizophrenia than of depression.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't know if I would actually go that far, but I definitely think it was filmed more. It used techniques more designed for huge melodrama on stage than for actually accurately portraying something
Mm-hmm.
with an up close camera that they actually had.
And that breaks the rules of the PSA. If you're going to make a PSA, you need to accurately portray the symptoms because you're trying to be educational.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't really help that there's no real one consensus on what his mental health issues were.
No,
Like,
he
I
had
was,
he had
No,
he
but
had more than depression. This is the guy that cut off his own
Yeah.
fucking ear.
mm,
He had some issues.
Mm-hmm.
although I've seen historians don't agree on that. It's possible that somebody else cut it off.
Really,
There's not as much of a I think it's been some of the more recent historical writings on it that have posed. I haven't read them because I'm not an art historian, but they've posed the theory that they think somebody else might have cut it off.
Huh.
Maybe for not liking the
I
way he
thought
was
he
trying to pay for
mailed it to
things.
somebody, an ex-girlfriend or something.
I think that's definitely true, but the fact that he did it, they're questioning that, not confirmed that it's not, but they're questioning it.
I mean, I guess I could see people at the time, if someone else did it, people being like, oh, well, he's that crazy fucker. Of course he did it himself or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That
because
happens frequently to
They
history.
weren't sensitive to it, yeah.
Gotta be careful who you listen to. But yeah. So that was Bill's, or was that
Yes.
Thomas? Okay, so
Yeah.
Thomas.
Right.
I guess just for lack of anything else, because I guess anything I could probably have thought of is probably already been said. I guess when the doctor's in the TARDIS and trying to like use the drawing that Vincent did of the creature to like scan it into the thing and it's not working, is like, oh, these bloody impressionists or whatever. And like, essentially having a go at him behind his back, and it's just kind of like, considering the theming of this episode, it's like that felt a bit off.
I definitely was not a fan of how he phrased that, because the Doctor, if anybody, would be one who recognizes that impressionism is art that takes skill, and that photorealism is different, not necessarily good versus bad. Especially considering that he were talking about how Van Gogh was, a brilliant painter. It's just the way they wrote it came off a bit flat.
Yeah, that's also why it
it
feels a
should
bit
have
off.
been
It's
more
like,
of a, I should realize impressionist, not a photograph.
I could see if there were Twitter edgelords in 2000. Oh no, there were Twitter edgelords in 2010.
Not the same, Bill.
No, I was thinking 2005. But
A few
yeah,
less.
I'm sure they had to go with that line, because there are tons of people who love to claim that impressionism and anything other than photorealism is bad art.
There's people like that with video games.
The line really should have been something along the lines of, "That's the problem with impressionists. It all looks lovely, but you really can't pass a scan."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, basically, there's something to that effect.
The TARDIS interprets this as anger and sadness. Well, that's lovely, but I can't identify an alien off of that.
That would have been more the Doctor. All right, are we up to me?
Yep.
So my least favorite scene is no longer in the episode. My least favorite scene, I think, was removed after broadcast.
Probably because the numbers changed.
Probably. And that was, after the episode ended, they came up with, if you know somebody that suffered depression, please call our hotline at... And me, in 2010, watching this episode, was looking at this and going, oh my God, you've turned my Doctor Who into a very special Blossom?
Yeah,
you sons of bitches!
They don't need a government list of everybody with depression. That's not going to be helpful for pretty much. Yeah, it's not going to be helpful for anybody, except eugenicists. Maybe they would love to have that.
But yeah,
hey, Bill, I got a hint for you. Everyone's depressed right now because they're all locked inside. At least to some degree.
I had originally, because I was not watching it with my critical eye, had come off. I had enjoyed myself in this episode. And then I saw that. And immediately that 180'd my thoughts about the episode.
I think the first time we talked about this episode off podcast, I was so confused because I'm pretty sure that scene wasn't in the Netflix version either.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when you mentioned it, I was like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, like I'd never seen that either because I didn't see this when it aired, and I just don't know if the Australian version showed it at all.
I did it and just kind of ignored it.
For me, it set me off because, Doctor Who has managed to talk about issues without making a very special Blossom for decades. Go ahead. And the fact that they just turned around and did it just eats at me. To this day, eats at me.
It kind of shows how running a show, ideas on how to run a show have changed over time, and it's not always for the best.
Especially since depression was the only big bad of the episode.
Basically.
So really, like, there's not, your attention is nowhere else. It's what you're watching the entire time.
And mind you, at the time, 2010 was at the point I was near the bottom of my depression. I hit bottom around 2012. So really pushed some buttons. And while I'm no longer as depressed as I was, those buttons remain and will probably always remain. It's permanently stained this episode for me. Part of it is literally I watch Doctor Who to escape my real world issues. I really didn't need to have them shoved back in my face. So, yeah. That will always be what I associate this episode with. Are we ready to go to final thoughts?
I was about to say, I think we're ready for final thoughts with that said.
Okay, Matt.
Final thoughts on this. They did not always depict depression right. There are definitely issues in this episode. That being said, I think the main plot of it works well. The Doctor does have some good moments and some usual flaky sugar high moments because it's 11. The idea that Van Gogh has a special... they always, even in this episode, they kind of mention the fact that people see his art for the special detail in the color, etc. And the fact that maybe he did have some sort of special level of seeing that causes him to see this monster in particular, which is interesting for us set up, and things go from there. Majority of this I still like. I will say that seeing a few things now, I think this is like the third time I've seen this. Noticing some key problems for the first time has actually lowered my ranking for this. But I don't think I by any means despise it, at least not currently.
Not to the bitterness that I show.
Yeah, not to the bitterness you have, because for you I just kind of hindsight let slide away off water off a duck's back, but for you it hit a particular button, and I can totally understand that.
I think this is a staircase episode when it comes to the ratings.
A staircase to heaven?
Yeah.
No.
Stairway to heaven.
All right.
Bill,
you're up.
So this is one of those episodes that I never really saw what other people saw in the episode. As much as I've watched it, I can enjoy moments, but I cannot see why some people like the episode so much. Part of it is because as Randy and myself to a lesser extent, and even Matt have really hit over the head, the portrayal of depression. Yeah, the deprayal of portression. What the fuck is that? the portrayal.
Do English.
The portrayal of depression is shit. As somebody who's, written, related to, and been many depressed characters, this did not ring true for me in any way. It came off as very hollow. The one scene that I thought really elevated it is not even until the Pandorica opens. And yeah, there's really just mainly the fact that that discussion about that it didn't need to save him to, and such, to really kind of help make that not as bad as it could have been. But it will never be one of my favorite episodes, and is not nowhere near the one that I enjoy going back to.
All right.
Now we go on to Thomas, who's going to say the exact opposite.
Well, that is the funny thing. Watching it today made me realize that it really was the museum scene with Bill Nighy that was like the one thing that would always, the first couple of times I watched this, and I took varying breaks between when I did. The first time I watched it, that museum scene made me cry for 10 minutes, and I don't know why. Because it's like, I don't give a shit about this artist. I never have. Beyond basic human empathy, I still don't. So it's always just kind of funny to me that that broke me so thoroughly. Because usually it's like family related stuff or this, that, whatever. That does it. And the second time I would have watched it maybe was when we were doing like a run through of Moffat's Run. And I cried, but nowhere near as much as that first time. This time, I got close, but it didn't happen. And it was a matter of, I think it's really just because I'm a different person now to then. And I could see, like, okay, yeah, their portrayal of his mental illness is a bit iffy. I think the reason that it doesn't make me want to absolutely condemn this is I think this is like they weren't intending.
They weren't intending
It's
any
not,
ill
it's
with it,
not
but they just didn't get it.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I would expect better from them, so I can't fully give them a pass. But yeah, it's like they weren't. It doesn't feel like they intentionally misrepresented, so it gets like a bit of a pass, but not a complete pass. But
I will
yeah,
say
this,
also really quick that museum scene does still give me the feels, but unlike some things that give me the feels, I can still stake my still black heart and tell it to stop. So
I
that
will
being
say
said,
it is funny as well because I think previously and like this time, I also figured I would kind of wonder what this episode would be like if you got rid of the monster of the week, and it really was a monster that no one else could see because it didn't exist, and it was just that it was related to his mental illness or something and whatever.
So combining this with Listen.
I guess so, yeah. Cause like I don't know, just like something like having just the full emphasis on that instead of there's a monster that no one else can see but him, and they can only sort of see it indirectly. It's like I guess there is still a metaphor there for depression and stuff, but it's like, did we really need a monster of the week?
Well,
Sort of a
if they
thing.
hadn't had one, it literally would have been a very special Blossom.
yeah, it would have just literally been a special episode Blossom. Why is the doctor even here?
The doctor comes to cure Van Gogh's depression.
Kill me now.
Yeah.
I do think it would be funny to watch the doctor spend 30 minutes looking for an invisible monster, and then after he gets all of his tech to bear, it's like, oh, there's really no invisible monster.
Yeah, but I think I would be giving that one some pretty low scorage.
Yeah, I would be giving that one an even lower score than what I'm currently giving this one. Because that reminds me too much of The Village. I hate The Village.
Okay, so are we up to me now?
Yep.
So the backstory behind this is that the author had a relative that killed himself due to depression not long before he wrote this. So he wrote this to raise social awareness about depression. Well, he may have written it well, but somebody needed to clue in the director and the actors because they didn't portray it well. And really, I felt it, it really tried to preach about it, which, as someone that's depressed, I didn't want to have it preached at me. I didn't want this to become a PSA. I don't like PSAs. I've hated PSAs since the 80s, and they turned my fucking Doctor Who into a PSA. And that will always detract from this. And I will say it a million times more.
Doctor Who is supposed to be fun. This is the antithesis of not fun.
Yes. All in all, I have to deduct points for the acting. Although the main characters did well, at least within the wheelhouse that they've been given.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Smith getting bored waiting for the painting to get done is once again him acting like a hyperactive 4-year-old.
I wanted to take that stick from earlier and smack him on the back of the head.
something we would see again during Power of 3, and I deducted points from it there.
Mm-hmm.
Except there it was the main plot.
Yeah, it was. It's just one of those things about Matt Smith's character that bothers me. Because, he's old.
He's old and internal, and he's now on a sugar high. Oh, for the Lord of God.
Yeah, there's points where previous doctors have killed time before. Does anybody remember the 6th Doctor fishing?
Bring out the 8th Doctor. 5 minutes. I can do a lot of things in 5 minutes. I need to pick up knitting. Does anyone want to play a game of chess?
Bring me knitting will always be one of my favorite lines.
The fact that he can't sit still for 5 minutes bothers me. And it's just such a Moffatism. But yeah, the depression portrayal bothers me. The fact that it might have been directed that way. That's points for direction. I like the music.
I was fine with the music. I definitely think it's the directing in particular. That's affecting the acting and everything else.
Acting are the main fall throughs on this one. And that's going to affect its rating. Speaking of which, let's rate. Matt, you're first.
Oh, before today, if you would have asked me about this episode, I probably would have given it an easy 4. I'm giving this one maybe a 4.5, but this is definitely not a 3.5 to me.
All right. All right, Phil.
So there's some fuzziness, but I think I'm going to go with the flat 3.
Thomas.
If you had asked me after I first watched this, I probably would have given it a 5. But now, with everything that I'm aware of and all this and shit, the nicest I can be without feeling that I'm really overreaching probably is a 4.
Randy gives a 2.5.
Oh, that's being generous.
Oh,
It gets a 2.
Hey, that
we skipped a step.
Still falls under staircase.
Skipped a step. Ooh, still landed it.
But yeah, if I didn't give it a 3, it would have been a 2.5. So either way, it would have been a staircase.
Yep. And looking at the scores, it is Matt that is correct.
Oh.
As that averages us up to a 3.1 for this episode. That will put this episode on par with, and I'm sure right now the internet is hating us.
Probably.
Spin on it. Somebody is going to reply to this. How could you do that to this episode? It's the greatest episode ever. No,
Feel
it's not.
free to start a flame war in the comments. We need the engagement.
It's on par with the Sea Devils, Planet of... Oh, it also is number 315.
Number 315 out of
379 things reviewed.
Oof.
It is. Yeah. It's down there. It's on par with the Sea Devils, Planet of Fire, Survival, the Romans, the Invasion of the Dinosaurs, Asylum of the Daleks. You all know how we hated that one.
Ooh.
The Awakening, Cold War, and Rings of a Cotton. It is better than The Wheel in Space, The End of Time, The Beast Below, Deep Breath, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, and The Lazarus Experiment, and not as good as Arc of Infinity. Wow. Robot, The Pandorica Opens, Big Bang, Underwater Menace, Planet of the Giants, and Time Lash.
Oh, God bless you, Tim.
There it goes. 315 out of 379. That is all we are going to say about Vincent and the Doctor. Try and tell us otherwise.
It's no Time Lash.
So everybody listening at home, let us know what you think about Vincent and the Doctor. Also, don't forget to like or dislike the video and subscribe to keep getting our YouTube exports, or follow us on Twitch to get our up to see our streams every Wednesday night.
All right. So next time we are going to put in our final entry for Series 5. It is The Lodger, written by Gareth Roberts and starring Matt Smith as the Doctor, Karen Gillian as Amy Pond, and James Corden as Craig Owens. See you next week.
Good night.
Good night.